For me, at the beginning of my career, was one of the most important things in life. Why? Because you've heard about working at Eurostar and British Airways, but my start of my career was not in those places. I started my career in the wonderful world of household cleaning. I started at a company called Procter & Gamble, and then moved on to other things. So Procter & Gamble, big international consumer goods company, great place to be, you've got a good training, but there's a problem. Nowadays, they're in very glamorous things like perfume and skin creams and nice products, okay? In my day, no. In my day, toilet cleaning, floor cleaning, soap powder. And I got the toilet cleaning bit. Not a great way. So I decided there must be something more interesting. Surely I can find a more interesting career than toilet cleaning, particularly as my parents were very upset after all the money they had spent on my education, and here I was cleaning toilets. So I decided to find something more interesting. I looked hard, and I failed, as you can see. And I spent a few years as a consultant. Seriously, go onto the internet and see if you can find some interesting pictures of an accountancy firm. They don't exist. All you have is buildings and people. That's all you can find anywhere. And then moved on, I guess, and fell on my feet a little bit, and was fortunate to become the head of marketing, if you like, or head of brands, it's called head of brands, for British Airways. And it was a really good time to be in the airline industry, because this was the early 1990s, we were coming out of the recession, and there was an opportunity to invest in innovation. And it was great fun. The most famous thing I guess I did in those days was to put beds into aeroplanes. Now, I'm sure, being the big, successful organisation that you are, I'm sure the senior management of the bank allow you to travel first class everywhere you go, yeah? So I'm sure you know all of this, but it will remind you, if nothing else. You know, first class in an aeroplane, it used to be very comfortable. Big seat, lots of legroom. You can, yes, I can see the seat in front, it's over there somewhere. Nice room. Two problems. Number one, it doesn't go flat. So overnight, you can't really sleep because it's not a flat bed. Number two, there's somebody next to you. And on an overnight flight, it's not great, is it? You know, it might be a stranger and you're trying to sleep. So when we introduced the beds, there were really two benefits. Yes, it went flat, but more importantly, it gave you your own private area, which was fantastic. So, you know, it was your own space. I remember getting a letter from a lady just when we launched it. She said, "Thank you so much for the new beds in aeroplanes. Now when I travel with my boss, I don't have to sleep with him." I think I know roughly what she meant to say. So from British Airways, I then, as you heard, went into my first chief executive role at a company called Eurostar. Now, for those of you who may not be familiar with Eurostar, it's the high-speed train that runs from London underneath the channel, underneath the water in the tunnel, and ends up in Paris or in Brussels. And it was my first chief executive job, and I was thinking, how can I introduce to an audience such as yourselves Eurostar? How about this? The French, the English, and the Belgians working together in perfect harmony. Now, any of you who have studied European history will know that that doesn't happen very often. And it didn't happen at Eurostar. But I have the secret to solving that problem. I am Scottish, not English. And that works perfectly, especially in France, and it's important in Belgium they understand you're not French as well. But a bit more of Eurostar later. Then, yes, my short life in the banking world. And I was chief executive of a bank called Sainsbury's Bank for 3.5 years in the UK, and I'm going to tell you a little bit more about that one later on. And then I've been doing my own thing, working with companies around the world for the last sort of 8 or 9 years. So, what have we got? Well, on the surface, it looks like you should only listen to me when I talk about Sainsbury's Bank, because it's the only thing I know about banking, okay? Very little. But I'm going to try and persuade you that some of the lessons I've learned in other industries can be just as valuable, because they're lessons about transformation, they're lessons about innovation, what we need to do as leaders inside a business, as well as the external opportunities. And these businesses are very different. You know, this is consumer goods, sometimes they're business to business, there's transport, there's financial services, very, very different. Also, very different in stages of business for when transformation becomes important. In Procter & Gamble and Price Waterhouse and British Airways, these would get businesses that were already very successful. They were at the top of their game. So innovation or transformation for them was, how do we stay ahead? Okay? The most innovative company I ever worked for in my career was Procter & Gamble. Why? Because in most of their markets they are number one. And when you're number one, you have to work harder than anybody else. Because think about it, if you're running, you run at a certain speed. If somebody's chasing you, you run faster, yeah? That's how P&G philosophy worked. And it's a very similar situation to, I know, the one you are in. You know, you are the leaders. And as such, that means everybody else is after you. They're trying to copy you, they're trying to chase you. So you need to be almost more innovative than them. And that was the P&G philosophy. Eurostar and Sainsbury's Bank were quite different. For them, innovation was about rescue. This was businesses in big trouble. I remember my first day at Eurostar. I arrived. There was a big press conference that day. I thought, well, that's very nice of them to have a press conference to announce my arrival. But it wasn't. It wasn't. It was a press conference to announce the results from last year. A loss of more than £200 million. Okay? Bit of a problem. I thought, I wish you had told me that before I signed my contract. Secondly, the tunnel was shut. I don't know if you remember from your newspapers, but not long after the launch of the Channel Tunnel, there was a fire. The tunnel was shut for 5 months. There was no service. That fire was the day after I signed my contract. And number 3, the French workers were on strike. So it was kind of, welcome to your new job. I thought it could only get better. Actually, to be honest, if you know anything about Europeans, the French on strike, not a big problem. It happens every week on about Thursday. So, not a big problem. But there's one thing that is common, and there's one thing that flows through, which is the theme I'm going to play with as we go through this morning. And I've split this morning into kind of 2 sessions of about 90 minutes each. We get a good break in the middle. If you want to break through, I genuinely believe that the best place is to look outside your current environment. You're number one. You're the best. Everybody's trying to copy you. If you look just at other banks or other financial services, of course we'll learn some things and we will get better. But real breakthroughs come when we bring something new to the environment. And that involves looking to new places. And that's what I'm going to try and persuade you this morning. I've seen it in new product development many times. If I look at British Airways beds, what were we trying to do? We were trying to turn this into a bed. Okay? So, where do you go? You go to the people that would normally work with you to design the interior of an aircraft. And they come and explain why they are the experts. We're the people that can do this for you. And they give you a lecture on their expertise. And they tell you all about the things they know about aeroplanes. You need to have special wiring here, and safety struts there, and this needs to be impact resistant, and you need to have special materials that will resist fire. And before you know it, there's 37 reasons why they will never make that into a bed. Because they have too much expertise. They can see the problems. Their way of explaining why they are the expert is to tell you about all the problems you're going to have. We decided this was not very creative. We needed a big idea. So instead, we looked to somebody else. We looked to a company who know nothing about aeroplanes. Nothing. But what they do know about is creating luxury in a small space. These were people who designed the interiors of luxury boats, sailing boats and motor yachts in the Mediterranean. And they would design things like this. This is clearly a very big luxury boat, or sailing boat, clearly, with the beds that they put in there. But that's what they do. So we said, if they looked at our problem, could they help? And they did. And they were far more creative and came up with much bigger ideas for us and allowed us to create the first class interiors and the first airline to put beds into aeroplanes. And we did it simply because we stopped thinking we're airline, it's all about aeroplanes, and thought instead, let's look elsewhere. So we thought, gosh, as an idea, that seemed to work. How could we do that again? So we had a problem. Now, this is a problem that is very, very prevalent in the UK. Now, those of you that have visited the UK will know that we have lots of problems. But one of our biggest problems is that if you've ever been to the UK, you'll know we like to stand in a line, in a queue, yeah? We like to queue up. It's comfortable that there's somebody in front, there's somebody behind, we're there, it's good. And these French people who walk to the front, we don't like them, no, get back, you know. That's a problem when you've got lots and lots of people in your place of work. And this is Heathrow Airport, on a good day. And we had a big problem before we could build the new terminals at Heathrow. We had just